On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
So the very last thing the coronation needs is a sickening garnish of the cut-price Kardashians. Harry is not deserving of my empathy.
In your opinion?
You did a lot of damage that day. You did a lot of damage and I had to come along and fix it. Just like Harry did a lot of damage and other people had to come along and fix it.
You, Louis Walsh, you want to defend the indefensible? Come on, mate. It's all over, isn't it, for Madonna? It's embarrassing.
She's iconic. She's one of our biggest pop stars ever. You just don't like her.
Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Uncensored. King Charles will be crowned in May in a ceremony gilded by British history. Millions, if not billions, will watch around the world as Charles formally ascends the throne at Westminster Abbey, where every coronation for the last 957 years has been staged. Think about that for a moment. A millennium of history, our history, Britain's history. 30 kings and queens are buried there. It's the sacred place where the late Queen herself was married and crowned and where she marked the death of her own husband. And that ribbon of history is what makes the British monarchy unique. State occasions like the coronation belong not just to the royals, but to the people of Britain and the Commonwealth. So the very last thing the coronation needs is a sickening garnish of the cut-price Kardashians, hogging the spotlight and making notes for the next cash-grabbing exposé. Harry won't say yet if he'll attend, but he's made his terms very clear.
I don't know whether they'll be, watching this or not, but what they have to say to me and what I have to say to them will be in private, and I hope it can stay that way.
The irony is just breathtaking, isn't it? 416 pages and countless interviews spewing intimate family secrets. Now he wants privacy. And according to his latest whining interview, he also wants the royals, the people he's just been slaughtering for weeks on end, to say sorry. What I'd really like, he says, is some accountability and an apology to my wife, he told The Telegraph. You know what you did? And this is beyond parody. You know what you did, and I now know why you did it, and you've been caught out. So just come clean. He's addressing this to our king and to our future king. And he went on. It was 100 pages, and now it's down to 400 pages. It could have been 2 books, put it that way. And the hard bit was taking things out. He then accused the media of having a, quote, bleep ton of dirt about my family. I know they have it, and they sweep it under the carpet for juicy stories about somebody else. You had a big story on Sunday in which your sources at the palace were basically indicating that notwithstanding the onslaught that's come their way, King Charles in particular was prepared to consider reconciliation before the coronation in May. Now, I've got to say, before I get you to talk about that, my own sources tonight, who I would describe as pretty impeccable, believe that's a bit of a reach, say that Charles is absolutely livid, and actually reconciliation right now is most definitely not on the cards. There's been no contact whatsoever with anyone in Montecito, and that may well stay the same. So let's thrash out our sources here. How confident are you that you think that Charles really does want to reconcile with somebody who's really shown that any attempt to do anything just immediately gets commercialised?
Well, good evening, Piers. I think, sources aside, if you speak to people who really know the King, they will tell you that he absolutely does not want to be estranged from his son for the rest of his life. There is no doubt that Charles is livid. The whole royal family are pretty livid about what Harry has done. But we have a few months now, very, very crucial months, leading up to the coronation. And actually, one of the most extraordinary lines in that book was Harry's revelation that Charles said to him and William after Philip's funeral, "Please, boys, don't make the rest of my life a misery," which at the moment Harry is doing a very good job of. But what Charles will not want, really won't want, is estrangement from his son forever and any kind of major overshadowing of the coronation. And if there is nothing done, no contact at all between now and the coronation, I really do think we're going to keep hearing from Harry and Meghan in a very negative way, and Charles will want to avoid that.
But you know what my response would be? It's like, all right, keep yapping if you want to. You've done your worst. Honestly, keep yapping and just completely ignore them. Don't invite them to any royal events. I mean, Jenny Bond, why the hell should they be invited to a coronation? It's the people's coronation. It's our coronation for our monarch. All they've done, these two, is damage the monarchy, damage the reputation of that institution, damage their family, the royal family, on which the monarchy's future depends. What on earth have they done to deserve an invitation to a coronation? Where, no, it's not just Charles, by the way. It's Camilla as well getting crowned, who Harry just trashed in his book.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, this is the most important day probably in the whole of Charles's life. And if, as the loving father, which I believe him to be, he wants his younger son to be there, then I think that is his right and his privilege. And I think an invitation will be extended to them. I think to not invite them really is going to be feeding the hand that bites Charles. So it'd be wise to invite them. And if they do come, I think we, the media, actually should take it upon ourselves not to make it overshadow the coronation. I mean, we don't want to have screaming headlines about them. So I think we should just have a footnote at the bottom of our coverage of the coronation and say also in attendance were the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I think that might be one approach.
I'd like a footman to drag them out in that eventuality. Let me bring in Tessa Dunlop. Look, you are the great apologist for Meghan and Harry. Here's my question for you. Why would two people who hate everything the royals seem to stand for, hate the monarchy, are intent on destroying it, have done nothing but trash it and diminish it in the last 2 years, why on earth would they want to be at a coronation of the next monarch of this country?
Piers, I thought you'd read the full 400 plus pages of Spare. Then you will have got the message loud and clear. There is no macro Harry plan. He is a dyed-in-the-wool royalist.
No, he's not.
He doesn't. Yes,
No,
I'm
no.
afraid. He's going about it all the wrong way. He's done unspeakable damage, but he wants to save the monarchy, apparently. No, I'm being serious.
No,
And
what he wants,
No.
Tessa, let me just respond to that. What he wants is to keep the titles, the royal titles for him and his wife, because it's the titles that make the money. And they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. His book, #1 global bestseller, his documentary series, huge success, blah, blah, blah. Of course it is. He's trashing the royal family from the inside.
This is a boy in pain who grew
please.
up... I'm so sorry.
Please.
I'm so sorry. Who grew up in a goldfish bowl.
Is he in pain or has he never been happy? Which one is it? He's telling us how happy he is.
Who grew up in a goldfish bowl, who's thrashing his way out of the gilded cage, but actually has realised he doesn't know how to exist without the gilded cage.
Oh, no, he does.
I, incidentally, am no apologist for Harry.
You are.
But I do apologise on your behalf, because one minute you sit there, Piers, and you say, oh, they'll keep yapping away, they should be ignored. There is no way, if they so much as fart, that you would ignore what they say. You stoke the boiler, you stoke the problems of the royal family.
Let me be clear. People say this to me, they go, why do you keep banging on about these two?
Why do you?
Because they keep trashing the royals. In podcasts, in books, in documentary series, in interviews. It never stops. And I say to them now, I will stop writing and commenting about them if they just shut up. Go to Camp Montecito, be the happy people you keep telling us that you are. Stop trashing the royal family. Stop attacking our monarchy. Stop diminishing this country. If you do that, I'll leave you alone.
You've just heard from the
I don't want to be left alone.
dignified Jenny Bond. Reduce it to a footnote, Piers, but you couldn't resist doing that because, like them, you make money from this.
Jenny.
Let's own it. You make money from this.
I bow to nobody. Of course I do. Everybody who's involved in covering the royals
my case.
makes money. Well, you're making money appearing on this show tonight.
Thank you. Double time. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So you're making money too out of it. So let's not be hypocrites. Jenny Bond, look, no, I bow to nobody in my admiration of Jenny Bond, but she would have been the first in her previous capacity as the BBC's royal doyenne to probably not actually reduce them to a footnote at the coronation because she'd know it's a big, hot story. And this is the problem, Anne Widdecombe, isn't it? Is that unfortunately, everywhere they go, so does the lens of attention because they make it their job to make sure that we don't leave them alone.
That is exactly why I think they should not be at the coronation. For this reason, I asked myself a very straightforward question. Which will be the bigger circus? If they don't come or if they do come? And if they come, they're likely to be booed. We all know that. There'll be a lot of attention on them because they're there.
Well, that'll be the story. They get booed at the coronation.
Exactly. Whereas if they're in Montecito,
totally agree.
We're all free to concentrate on the coronation. So I feel very strongly they shouldn't come. I also, hang on, you had a long go. I also feel equally strongly that the royals should not be proposing a negotiation meeting, because we've heard Harry's terms. He wants an abject surrender.
No, I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him.
No,
This is
exactly.
the point. I mean, Roya, this is the problem I would have if I were Charles and William in particular, is how do you trust them? How do you trust them, given that almost all their private conversations with Harry have now appeared in this book, including really intimate stuff, including at Prince Philip's funeral and so on? How on earth can they trust him to have some sort of private meeting which stays private?
Well, that's a great question, and that's something that's even been acknowledged by sources close to Harry and Meghan, who've said to me, and I've written that even they acknowledge that there's an issue there, that perhaps the royal family might not trust that private stays private. But what I would say is, as much as it might stick in the craw of many members of the royal family, particularly the ones you've just mentioned who come under heavy fire in the book, I think if the king isn't seen to somehow do something, I think he's going to come under even more heavy fire from his son and other people down the line. But that will be the great test. I think if they do propose some sort of, and I'm not saying a negotiation, but some sort of sit down, and then something leaks out and it comes from Harry and Meghan's side, then I think it probably is game over. But at least the king may have tried.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jenny Bond, I feel incredibly sorry for Charles. He's lost both his parents in the space of 2 years. He's probably still mourning his mother, who just died a few months ago. He's taken on the monarchy. You know, he's our new monarch. He's about to be crowned the king of this great country. I mean, all these huge pressures, both personally and professionally. And then he's got his young son causing just total, endless, relentless mayhem. I mean, if that was one of my sons, I've said to them, I've got 3 boys in their 20s. I say, one of you does this to me and goes rogue like this, that's it, bang. There won't be any reconciliation parties. You're done.
Well, you see, I don't think he wants to lose his son as well as having lost his parents. And I do think that Charles is quite a compassionate guy. And I think he would probably agree with me that what we're witnessing here is almost the unravelling of a youngish man who is so mentally fragile now and so confused. There are so many errors in the book. And conflicted within himself and really suffering. And I agree,
Jenny,
he's gone a bit loopy. He said some terrible things. No, but
Jenny,
I think we should show
to interrupt you,
some
but I want to pick you up on
compassion.
that thing about the mental health thing. I don't see somebody suffering or in pain. I see a smug little narcissist making a ton of cash, abusing and revealing secrets about his family. I don't see anyone fragile whatsoever. On the one hand, he says, I'm the happiest I've ever been. On the other hand, he wants us to believe he's a pain-struck young guy. He's not. He's nearly 40. He's had a long time to get over the pain that, by the way, millions of people have to go through, losing parents when they're young. It's not exclusive to him. His own brother went through exactly the same thing and doesn't seem to feel the need to trash his family in public. So I just don't really buy in, Jenny, to this, he's racked with pain and is so fragile. I think he doesn't give a damn about the damage to the mental health of all his relatives, and yet he's supposed to be the Prince of Mental Health.
I think he is racked with pain. And in his book, I thought it was very, very moving when he said that went for a second lot of therapy. He was frightened of losing the pain he had felt for all those years for the loss of his mother. He was frightened of losing that pain in the therapy because he would lose his mother again. And I thought it was incredibly moving. Now, I'm not going to defend Harry for all he's done and all he's said. A lot of it's abominable. Most of it's loopy. And I agree. I think he's a little bit unbalanced and deluded, perhaps because all the drugs he took. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I
do have
still
compassion
taking
for his mental health.
No, I think he's a Californian dopehead. You meet them all the time when you're out there. Tessa Dunlop, you've been raging away as normal here. What have I said that's wrong?
You are renowned for lacking empathy. I won't use.
I've got plenty of empathy.
What? No, I'm so sorry. He's renowned for it.
I'm not renowned for it. I'm not renowned for it. No. I actually have a lot of empathy for the right people. Actually, and my entire career, I've actually shown
empathy.
I show empathy for people who deserve it. Harry is not deserving of my empathy.
In your opinion,
he has zero empathy for anybody else that he's trashing.
As somebody who has watched Harry from birth through the death of his mother throughout it, you don't have a shred of empathy for his peculiar lifestyle that's trained him for nothing.
No,
That's left him with
none.
dump loads of
Absolutely
expectations
none.
and shed
No.
loads of pain.
None-
Did
none
you
at
not
all.
go to prep school?
No, I think he did.
Imagine going to prep school
I
and your
think-
mum steamrolled bed.
Actually, I went to prep
Come on,
school
give
till
me
I
a
was
break.
13, actually. And then I
Yeah,
went to
so
a state school.
now imagine you're
Then
in
I
a
went to a
prep-
state school, and actually, what he should have done is go to a state school. And you're,
Oh, for
you're
goodness.
grimacing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely just calm down, the pair of you.
I'm perfectly calm.
Neither of you sounded at the moment. Now, can I just point
Pretty
this out?
rich coming from you. You're normally the one blowing up, but go on.
I've actually sat here trying to get a word in edgeways for a long time, as you know.
Come on.
I mean, let me make this point. The coronation is not just a personal occasion. Now, you can understand a father wants to involve his son in all sorts of things, but it's not a royal wedding. It's a coronation. It's an occasion of state. And you've got to ask yourselves, what is the most dignified way that we can have this? Because it is an occasion of state, and therefore there must be a great deal of dignity. That won't be by having Harry present.
I totally agree. Well, Harry and Meghan, sorry to keep banging on about them, but they keep banging on about everybody else, don't they? So we have no choice until they get exhausted, and we all get exhausted, and we can all move on. But for now, they remain in the position that they are demanding an apology from the royal family for all the filth that they've thrown at the royal family in the last 2 years. But why should the royal family apologise when you consider what's happened with Jeremy Clarkson? Now, Clarkson wrote what he has admitted was a stupid and inflammatory newspaper column that overstepped the mark. The outrage was predictable and it was frankly justified, as he now concedes. But he apologised on Twitter, said he got it completely wrong. Then on Christmas Day, he wrote directly to Prince Harry. On Christmas Day, think about that. And yesterday he issued a sprawling, shamefaced self-immolation of a public apology, about as grovelling as it could be. I really am sorry, he pleaded, all the way from the balls of my feet to the follicles of my head. This is me putting my hands up into mea culpa with bells on. It doesn't get more fulsome, frankly, than what he posted on Instagram. And coming from Clarkson, who would probably rather shoot himself than be like that normally, it carried even more weight. But it wasn't enough for Harry and Meghan. And it took me back, actually, to when I was asked to apologise to Meghan Markle for doubting her word on Good Morning Britain. And one of the reasons I refused was, why would I apologise, A, for something I believe, i.e. she lies, and secondly, if I did apologise, what do you think would happen? Anyway, even if I pretended that I was sorry, they wouldn't accept it. She wouldn't accept it. She'd just use that as an excuse to go even harder. That's what they do. They're the victims. Always. Perennial victims. So I refused and I left, and I'm very happy about that because I wouldn't be here doing the show if I hadn't done that. But Clarkson is now in a similar position, looking like he may possibly lose a lucrative and highly popular series of shows on Amazon Prime, perhaps even Who Wants to Be a Millionaire at ITV. And you might have your own view either way about whether Clarkson should be cancelled in this way. I don't think he should be. I don't think that punishment fits the crime of a stupid joke in a column. But let's go back again to the apology. They were desperate for an apology from Clarkson, simply so they could reject it. They could have accepted it, noted it, even ignored it, but instead they revelled in it, pouring fuel on the flames of his humiliation. Within hours, they lashed him in a statement for writing articles that spread hate rhetoric, dangerous conspiracy theories, and misogyny. It's clear this is not an isolated incident shared in haste, they said, but rather a series of articles shared in hate. God, the dripping pomposity of that statement and the disingenuousness of it. Harry, let us remind ourselves, has just literally just published a best-selling 416-page book, which is effectively a series of articles shared in hate. And when it comes to misogyny, he, like his wife, identifies arch-feminists. And yet here he is. And we've gone to the audio book to put it in his own words, describing the disabled matron that he mocked at school.
Unlike the other matrons, Pat wasn't hot. Pat was cold. Pat was small. Walking was hard, stairs were torture. She'd descend backwards, glacially. Often we'd stand on the landing below her doing antic dances, making faces. Do I need to say which boy did this with the most enthusiasm? We went on mocking her as she came down the stairs. The reward was worth the risk. For me, the reward wasn't tormenting poor Pat, but making my mates laugh.
Where's Pat's apology? And what about the first woman he slept with?
I suspected he was referring to my recent loss of virginity, inglorious episode with an older woman. She liked horses quite a lot and treated me not unlike a young stallion. Quick ride, after which she'd smack my rump and sent me off to graze. Among the many things about it that were wrong, it happened in a grassy field behind a busy pub.
Lovely way to talk about this older woman, a private citizen who's now the subject of global mockery. Who is that woman? Does he care about the way he talked about her? It's not exactly chivalrous, is it, to reveal stuff like that in a book that's been read by millions around the world? Where's her apology? And how about the female newspaper editor that Harry really didn't like?
Who the hell is this editor? Loathsome toad, I gathered. Everyone who knew her was in full agreement that she was an infected pustule on the arse of humanity, plus an excuse for a journalist.
An infected pustule on the arse of humanity. Where does that sit with being nice to women, being supportive of women, being a feminist? Where's the apology for that female newspaper editor? Is there going to be one for that blatant misogyny? And what about Camilla, the Queen Consort, his own stepmother?
She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage. She needed to rehabilitate her image. In a funny way, I even wanted Camilla to be happy. Maybe she'd be less dangerous if she was happy.
His own stepmother, the love of his father's life, our queen to be. She'll be coronated too. A dangerous villain. Where's Camilla's apology for that hateful rhetoric? You see my point here. If anyone should be grovelling for forgiveness and issuing apologies, isn't it Harry and Meghan for selling all the family secrets to the highest bidders? Tricia, here's my central problem with this, and you and I have disagreed about a lot of this whole story from start to finish. In fact, you were on the Good Morning Britain episode that led to me departing. But on the central charge I make of rank hypocrisy, when you hear those excerpts from Harry's book, in his own words, particularly, I would argue, the way he mocks this poor matron, and we don't know what's happened to her, that is blatant misogyny, the way he talks about her in that book. Who is he to really be demanding apologies for misogyny from others without offering one himself to those that he's been misogynist towards?
I think, as Harry rightfully said, in Camilla's words, and Camilla, you know, the Queen Consort, has been very strong on this. It was more the violence that Jeremy Clarkson involved in that, you know, Game of Thrones, clumsy Game of Thrones, quote-unquote joke. And I think it was more the violence that they were talking about. Misogyny, I don't know if it is. If you put something into context about all the boys mocking somebody who was disabled, which I don't agree with at all, but it's the actual violence of putting it out there and the way in which it was done without and naming the person, actually naming the person, and the person already having said that they've suffered as a result of hatred in the press, they've had death threats and so on. So first of all, I was thinking it's that. And I don't think we should lose the sight that it's not the Sussexes perhaps putting Jeremy Clarkson out of a job. That's got nothing to do with whether he apologises or not. You and I, Piers, know, and Richard Tice would know as well, for our employers, we sign a contract that we won't bring our companies into disrepute. Now, if our companies, if our employers decide that we've actually done that, then, you know, it's up to them whether they fire us or not.
Yeah, but on the fact that they have simply refused to accept what is clearly a very long and fulsome apology, which is what everyone had been demanding. Well, actually, it is. If you read the whole thing he posted on Instagram,
yeah, no, I did.
Absolutely,
I did.
Well, you don't think he meant it?
I felt very uncomfortable with it. No, I wasn't. It did seem a little bit, you know, from the balls of my feet and what have you. It did, and I don't understand, Piers. Maybe you know better than I, obviously. When it said private and confidential, how do we know the contents? You know, I just don't get it. It did seem the fact that it was so publicly done. Surely the way to do it would have been to quietly go about it and what have you. But
we are talking about an apology made to the two least private people in the world right now. People who literally have revealed every private conversation of their relatives to the world.
But if you want to say that, well, two wrongs don't make a right. But I just found,
were they right to refuse to accept the apology?
We can all choose to what we want to do with an apology.
Well, were they right?
It's different between family members.
Did it sit well with you? Yeah, but here's the thing, Tricia. We live in this cancel culture world where everyone screams and Jeremy Clarkson must never be allowed to, you know, walk again in public or get a job or whatever it is.
I haven't said that. Who said that?
I believe if you do repent, if you do admit what you did was completely wrong, particularly if it's a dumb joke in a newspaper column, right, which it was a stupid thing. He shouldn't have done it. And we all know no one's defending what he wrote, right? So let's just agree on that. But if you then make a fulsome public apology, which goes against everything Clarkson stands for, by the way, for the people who then receive it to literally not just refuse to accept it, but go on the attack, seems to me utterly graceless.
I don't think that, for me personally, I don't think they were on the attack. I thought they were stating the obvious about, you know, but I will have to disagree about the fulsome apology. You might see it as that. Maybe you're a mate of his. From the reading point of view...
I'm not, to be honest, let me clarify that. As I said on last night's show, I have a scar on my head from where he punched me in the head. So we're not exactly best buddies. I do get on...
I might have to be friends with him.
I get on OK with him now in the sense of, you know, a bit like... you know, two porcupines prowling around each other when we meet at parties. I don't know whether you've heard this, Tricia, but this is what Iman said about you, along with another guest I had last week. She said this.
I watched you yesterday and the day before. I watched you be gaslit by two ignorant black women. I actually felt quite sorry for you. So I want to say, welcome to the club, Piers Morgan. How does it feel to be gaslit when claiming something is racism? How does it feel? It's annoying, right? It's annoying.
This was, of course, about our quite fiery debate in which I got very exercised about the fact that Meghan and Harry for 2 years led the world to believe that the palace had been racist about the skin colour of their baby. And then they decided to turn around and say, actually, we never meant that at all, which I thought was deplorable. You defended it, and that was Iman's verdict on your defence. I was basically getting gaslit. What's your response?
Not so much the gaslit bit, but I guess Iman and I would have to agree to disagree. I wouldn't call anybody ignorant just because they don't agree with my point of view. And I don't think it's helpful, especially when we're discussing something like racism, and you know, one black person calling another person ignorant because they don't agree. That I find sad. I'm saddened by that, and you know, so I'm not going to pick a fight with Iman about that because I've seen that happen you know, I've worked in the media for 35 years. I know how that game's played. So that would be my only comment. She's entitled to her view. You're entitled to your view. I'm entitled to my view. But I actually think it's quite disgraceful to label someone ignorant purely because they don't agree with you.
So it's not acceptable to call someone ignorant, but you can call them disgraceful. Iman?
Well,
no, I said doing it is disgraceful.
Well, it's
Sorry,
the same thing, isn't it?
Mix
It's the same thing. You just called it
No,
disgraceful.
I'm saying...
Iman, you're
No,
disgraceful
doing
for
it-
calling Tricia
Sorry.
ignorant.
I think it's...
Well,
I
Tricia, we just
think
heard
it's
you. You just said
disgraceful.
she was disgraceful.
Exactly.
So let her answer the charge of being a disgrace.
I didn't say she was disgraceful.
OK, Iman, you're a disgrace for calling Tricia ignorant.
I think I'm awesome, personally, so I just want to throw that out there. Secondly, I never called you ignorant because you didn't agree with my opinion. I called you ignorant because you have a lack of knowledge. There's a clear difference, and it was never about a view. It's about just understanding facts. And when we talk about unconscious bias, that's based on feeling. That is a fact, Tricia. So it's not about me and you disagreeing as two black women. I'm going to call you ignorant in spite of your colour if you have a lack of knowledge. Simple as that.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, Tricia, come on, you've got to answer the charge. It was basically your ignorance as in lack of knowledge of the subject you were talking about.
If somebody decides that I'm ignorant, I'm not going to sit here and try to dissuade them otherwise. They've quite clearly made up their minds. If Iman wants to call me ignorant and thinks of me as ignorant, what have you, fine, go ahead.
Tricia, you did a lot of damage that day. You did a lot of damage, and I had to come along and fix it. Just like Harry did a lot of damage, and other people had to come along and fix it. Me, Shola, Kiande, we had to come along and fix your dirty work. So you know what? I don't have time for people like you when you come on national TV spewing garbage. And you're right. I'll actually add to your second point. I don't want to argue because I'm a bit more... In fact, I don't believe black women should come onto TV arguing, so I'll just leave it at that. I called you ignorant because of your lack of knowledge.
This is Talk TV.
We're going to come to Madonna now. I've been teasing this all show. She, of course, was a big pop star back in the 80s. I went to see her at Wembley Stadium, actually, in the Holiday Tour, and she was fantastic. But then that was about 40 years ago, and neither of us have aged particularly well. I would argue I've aged slightly better than Madonna. But in recent years, is this auto cue going to move, or am I going to have to make it up as I go along? I don't mind. She's lost the plot. Let's take a look at the plot, Lizzie.
In this room, all bets are off. Amy Schumer. Oh. Truth or dare? Dare. Ooh. I want you to show me, with this spread, how you lick your husband's... What? I mean...
Yeah, I can't take any more of it. I'm sorry. Watching someone in their 60s behaving like that. We've got this other little hit and miss. Yeah, these are some of her greatest hits. Yeah, One Under the Bed, Rock Bottom, and so on. Just general... This has been basically what she's been putting out now for several years. And I'm sorry, it's just... There's got to be an end to this, hasn't there? Absolutely, I can't. Oh, my God. Oh, dear, oh dear. Gone to the dogs, quite literally there with the old dog bowl. All right, I think we'll spare the viewers any more of this. But joining me now is music manager Louis Walsh and podcast host Leah Halpern. Let me talk to both of you. First of all, you, Louis Walsh, you want to defend the indefensible. Come on, mate. It's all over, isn't it, for Madonna? It's embarrassing.
It's not all over, Piers. No way. Her tour is going to sell out. You just watch. They'll be adding extra dates in every city. This is the greatest hits tour. I would go and see her. Absolutely. She's iconic. She's one of our biggest pop stars ever. You just don't like her.
No, it's not that. Actually, I don't even care. I don't need to like singers to enjoy them at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I don't need to like any artist to enjoy them. But in her case, I find her behaviour for a woman in her 60s just utterly embarrassing. I mean, if that was my mother or grandmother or something, you'd be like cringing.
Piers, you're doing exactly what she wants you to do. You're talking about her. She's controversial. She's always in the news. She's her own best PR person. And listen, this tour is going to be massive, whether you like it or not.
Well, I don't doubt it'll be a success. A bit like Prince Harry's book. I don't doubt it'll be successful. It's just unbelievably distasteful. Let me bring in Leah. Look, Leah, I'm right, aren't I? I mean, you're a young woman. I mean, is this how you'd like to be in your 60s?
Absolutely not. I think the whole thing is really bizarre. I don't know why we're celebrating this. She looks like she has potentially a mental health problem. I'm not sure why she's unable to just get old gracefully. Her face looks deformed, unfortunately. And I don't know why we're celebrating this. We live in a time where people talk about body positivity, but she's unable to just accept herself and grow old gracefully. The video was incredibly crass. And I think the whole thing is part of a much wider, again, political feminist statement to say women can go on for years being sexualized and doing whatever they want. And, you know, the society's going to love them for it. And it's not true. I don't really understand why she's not spending this time in, you know, her later years. She's mid-60s now, with her kids, with her grandkids, maybe teaching them everything she's learned in the music business or in life over the last decade.
I totally agree. I mean, Louis, I'm not being funny, but imagine being one of her kids, right? Just the sheer volume of embarrassing stuff that your mother posts on Instagram and whatever. And you just, I mean, it's so embarrassing for them. Imagine being at school, having to deal with that.
That's her job. She is the queen of pop. She has millions of followers all around the world. They're all going to buy her tickets. This is going to be one of the biggest tours of the year. Absolutely. Yeah, now, I know she's not in a great place physically, because the last time she was touring, I was in Miami. I was in the queue outside, and she cancelled the gig because she wasn't in a good place. Right. But I would go and see her again. This is like a greatest hits tour, Piers.
Why can't she go and do the equivalent of a pipe and slippers? Just go and, you know, put on a lot of clothing, go and sit in a rocking chair and just do the old hits from a chair.
No, she could go to Vegas and do it simple. She's gone all around the world. This is going to be massive, Piers. It's going to be controversial, but she's a great performer. She's a great singer. You're not her target audience, let's be honest. Both of you.
No, because
she's going to do really well.
I believe I'm not her target audience. Leah, final word to you. I mean, will you go and watch this show?
I definitely am not going to go watch it. I see no difference between what she's doing, showing her body off to the entire world in the most disgusting fashion, to mothers on OnlyFans and how their kids feel in school.
Totally
it's so
agree.
inappropriate, and I think it's quite disgusting.
All grandmothers on OnlyFans. I think we could raise the bar.
Exactly.
Listen, Louis, I appreciate your efforts to defend the indefensible, but I'm not buying it. Leia, thank you.
Okay.
You spoke common sense on the matter. Unfortunately, it will be a smash hit, this tour, and people will go. But then people like to look at car crashes on the motorway. Good to talk to you both. Thank you very much indeed. "15 months ago, Alec Baldwin shot dead a female cinematographer on the set of Rust, a movie he was starring in and producing. The death of Helena Hutchins is one of the most appalling tragedies in Hollywood history. Now, there was no doubt that it was an accident, but Helena Hutchins died, leaving behind a grief-stricken husband and a young child. And the person holding the gun that fired a bullet that killed her was Alec Baldwin. It was him that did that. He fired the bullet into his co-worker's body and snuffed out her life. Nobody else's hands were even near the gun. But since that tragic day, Baldwin's been the epitome of Hollywood arrogance. He's embarked on a woeful self-pitying PR tour that felt cynically designed to make people feel he was just as much of a victim as the woman he killed. He's repeatedly spewed indignant denial of any responsibility to his millions of followers on social media and in a succession of television interviews. Here's what he told ABC News.
Do you feel guilt?
No. I feel that there is. I feel that someone is responsible for what happened. And I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me.
No guilt at all, even though he was literally holding the gun that fired the bullet that killed this woman. Not a shred of personal responsibility, accountability, or guilt. Here he is addressing his fans.
I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of the people who sent me such kind words and, you know, best wishes and strength and hope and prayers and so forth and thoughts and lots of encouragement and lots of really, really great sentiments from so many people. I got hundreds of emails from friends and family and colleagues and people that some I hadn't heard from in quite a while, to send me strength and good wishes and so forth, and I'm very grateful for that. I want to say thank you to everybody. And online, on Instagram, many people commenting.
Sorry? You haven't just won an Oscar. That's what that speech sounded like, didn't it? An Oscar redemption speech. No, this is real life. It's not a film. A young woman was killed. Well, today, Santa Fe prosecutors announced that he, Alec Baldwin, and the film's armourer, a young woman called Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, will be charged with involuntary manslaughter. Both face up to 18 months in jail if they're convicted. But Baldwin, true to form, issued a statement through his attorney, striking a familiar tone. This decision distorts Helena Hutchins' tragic death, represents a terrible miscarriage of justice, his lawyer said. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. We will fight these charges and we will win. Well, we'll see about that, because that's not what the prosecutor thinks. Here's what the prosecutor said.
We've talked to many actors, A-list and otherwise, that have said that they always check their guns, or they have someone check it in front of them. So it's not, an actor doesn't get a free pass just because they're an actor. And that's what's so important, is that we're saying here in New Mexico, everyone's equal under the law. Everyone has to follow their duties and do what's right and take that safety into account so that this doesn't ever happen again.
Well, that's right. That's what I hear from actors too. They all check. If they're firing a firearm in any capacity on a movie set, they all check. Just for their own sake, never mind anybody else's. That there's no live ammunition or anything wrong with this weapon that they're using. Alec Baldwin's done a lot of talking, a lot of self-protective talking, a lot of spinning, a lot of denial of any accountability or responsibility. Well, his next words on this matter will be in a court of law. Julie, you've covered a lot of court cases, self-evidently, but what do you make of this, and how much jeopardy is Alec Baldwin now in?
He is in big trouble, Piers. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be with you. He is looking at a world of problems with these charges. This has been an investigation that took so much time. I want to show you something, Piers. I have in my hand just a portion of the investigation report. It's 551 pages. We know they were investigating since October of 2021 when poor Helena Hutchins was killed. And this is just a fraction of that investigative report. So this has been quite thorough, a very weighty decision made by these prosecutors in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to not only announce charges forthcoming against Alec Baldwin, but also against the armorer and prop master, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. I am certainly not surprised at these charges, Piers.
What is it to you, when you've been through all this, what is it to you that rings out, which maybe is a view shared by the prosecutor? What is it that rings out, you think, which points to negligence by Alec Baldwin?
You hit the nail on the head just now by using that word, Piers, the word negligence. That's what's so key, because I think what's hard for most people to wrap their minds around when you hear about this is we all know it was tragic. We know there's been nobody more upset than Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Her attorney just issued a statement a short time ago saying how upset she's been since this happened. Nobody wanted anyone to be killed. So I think what's hard to understand is that in America, you can face criminal charges even if you don't have bad intent. With the charges that these two are going to be facing, there's no malice involved. There's no evil mind or, depraved heart. No, this is just somebody acting negligently without using due caution and circumspection, doing what a reasonable person would not have done under those circumstances. So with something that was accidental, something that's so unfortunate and so tragic, there can still be criminal liability attached, Piers.
Yeah, and I think there should be. I have found Alec Baldwin's PR tool sickening. Absolutely sickening. He should have shut his mouth and waited for the legal process to come out. Instead, we've had these endless attempts to distance himself from any responsibility whatsoever. He feels no guilt. I would feel pretty guilty if I pointed a gun at someone and killed them. Even if it was an accident, I'd feel guilty. I'd feel like, wow, I just killed somebody. But there's nothing, not a shred of that. It's all been self-protective. It's all been about protecting the brand of Alec Baldwin. And I've watched it all on Instagram with his wife doing the same thing, you know, portraying him as a tormented family man going through hell on their endless expensive holidays and so on. Well, fine. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I just want to see the legal process play out and find out exactly, and I think we will do now, exactly how responsible Alec Baldwin was, not just as an actor who didn't check his own gun before firing it at somebody and pointing it in a woman's head, but also as a co-producer of a set that appeared to be a total safety shambles. And at the moment, he's saying, nothing to do with me, Gov, which I think is completely unsustainable. Judge, I don't know about you, I'm absolutely raging about Alec Baldwin generally at the best of times. I just felt that his extraordinary self-pitying tool to try and distance himself from accountability on this, it may actually have backfired and led to this DA wanting to nail him.
You know, Piers, I just interviewed the DA on the case, and I don't think there's anything that motivated her other than the evidence in this case. But as it relates to what you said in your comment, I agree with you. The fact that this guy, Alec Baldwin, thinks he's so important that he's going to go out there and tell the world that he didn't do anything, that he never pulled the trigger, would never point a gun at anyone and pull the trigger, that is, and, you know, I ran the DA's office. I was the DA, I mean, for, 3 decades. That is what any DA looks for in terms of evidence. It is an inconsistent statement that the DA made clear is contradicted by the FBI forensic evidence. When you've got a Colt 45 single action, it does not go off unless you put your finger on that trigger. Right. It is a single action firearm. And his arrogance, and you'll see on the 5 today, my interview of them, and I think that the most interesting answer that the DA gave me had to do with the fact when I asked her, did Baldwin cooperate with you? And she was very, very hesitant in her description. And I referenced there when she wanted his phone, when it first came out that he directed his assistant to get rid of the archives of messages. So we've got a guy who's arrogant, he's condescending, but that's not the basis for the charge. The basis for the charge, Piers, is that he took a weapon, he pointed a weapon at a human being, and he pulled the trigger. And he did so to a mother in the prime of her life, and she lost her life. Now, I don't care if you're on a movie set or on the Avenue of the Americas outside where I am right now. You do not do that. And the fact that he's charged only with involuntary manslaughter is consistent with the law. But there is an upward sentencing there if they determine, and this is up to the jury, that the use of the gun was a part of it. So he faces up to 6.5 years.
Wow, I didn't know that. In Santa Fe, you're going to get a jury that will be familiar with guns. Many of them will own guns themselves, will have a view about gun safety. And they'll have a view about gun safety generally. What is clear from this set was that the safety was a shambles. You had people already walking off set in protest at the lack of safety. You've got a very young armourer who was just 24 years old, very inexperienced. But my question, which remains the most perplexing thing, what were they doing with a hot gun anyway, in terms of potentially having one? Why would he have to ask, is it hot or cold? How could that even be a question? And why would any live ammunition be anywhere near a movie set?
And that's precisely the issue, Piers, and you understand that any a movie set that has live ammo on the set is negligent as far as I'm concerned, per se, but don't take my word for it. The truth is, and I asked the DA about this in my interview, the truth is that not only was it an unsafe set, there were two live rounds that went off, and the armorer who's charged is Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who's 24 years old, who never should have applied for the job because she herself admitted she didn't have the experience, but her father was famous, and therefore Baldwin said, you know, I'll save money here. And the DA was very clear. The DA said money was more important than safety on this set. But when a live round went off, and she knew it, and workers were walking off the set, they said it was unsafe. At that point, you have to be an idiot to not understand that you've got guns, live ammunition, live rounds going off, and you're pointing a gun and pulling a trigger? Come on. This
an
is
idiot, or you have to be an arrogant Hollywood movie star with a hot head, which is what we know Alec Baldwin is. Judge, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're flat out today, including on The Five. You'll be thrilled to hear I'll be joining you on The Five in a month's time again. It's one of the joys of my life working with you on that occasionally.
And ours as well, Piers. We look forward to it.
Take care, Judge.
Care.
So thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.